I've read your book, Midlife Medium, and again, it is fascinating. And in the book, let's start here. You talk about healing the relationship with your mother after she died. Let's start there. Tell us about that.
Okay, yeah, that is a good place to start. My mother and I had kind of a rocky relationship, starting in teenage years, is so common with daughters and mothers. And in her lifetime, let me say I'm an only child. And my mother was, in my opinion, probably was not the best mother for me. I wanted a more lenient mother, and she was a more controlling mother. And so we had a very rocky relationship that fell into my adulthood. We got along, but it was still not the best relationship. So after she passed, of course, when someone passes, that's when you review all of your relationships with that person. Did I do everything I could have? Was I kind enough to that person? And you go through that whole thing. For me, it was guilt because I didn't feel like I was a very good daughter, despite the fact that I also didn't feel she was a very good mother. I wasn't a very good daughter. I shared in the responsibility of our relationship. And so in that process, after she passed, I was on my journey to become a medium. And so I knew she was still with me. And I knew that we could still heal our relationship. So what I would do as I was in the process of developing my mediumship and learning more about spiritualism and learning more about the spirit world, I decided I needed to heal this relationship. I didn't want to wait till I got to the spirit world to heal it. I wanted to heal it now. And so I would send out emotions of apologies. I would talk to her like I wasn't able to talk to her here in the physical world because it was just too uncomfortable for me and it made it uncomfortable for her. So I was able to say all the things that I couldn't say while she was here. I think that's actually one of the blessings when one of our loved ones cross over. We can now say what we really wanted to say. And so I not only sent apologies to her, as well as my love, and that I was sharing responsibility in our relationship, but through other mediums, I would hear from her with her own apologies and with her understanding and realizing her role in the relationship as well. And at one point, I just felt like we were done. We had healed. We understood each other, and our relationship was on the right track now.
It's interesting that you say that you heard through other mediums, because I had a similar thing where many mediums were telling me your mom has messages. I wasn't hearing from her specifically. Was there a reason that you needed to hear through other people, do you think?
I think one of the reasons that it's important to hear it through other mediums is because then you don't doubt yourself. If you do hear it for yourself, and I will tell you, there was one instance when I did, you doubt it and you think this is just my imagination, I'm making this up, and then you never really know. But when you hear it from a medium who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your mom, and they're telling you things that you need to hear because of this rocky relationship, all of a sudden it's believable and you trust it. Now, the one time where I did receive, well, there are probably many other times, but in fact there were, now that I think about what I wrote in Midlife Medium, there were several times. But the one time that really stands out is when I had a dream about her. And we often talk about those dreams that make total sense, that seem so real. We refer to those as spirit visitations. And she visited me in a dream. And I didn't get to say goodbye to her. I wasn't there when she passed. And she gave me the opportunity to say goodbye to her and to talk to her then. And so I feel like that was another validation that she was hearing me and she was understanding what I was trying to do in healing our relationship. So I think they do communicate in different ways. The question is whether or not you believe it's really them.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting me ask that. No, so what's your background in healing?
Well, I think all mediums are healers. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind, because the messages we deliver, the spirits we connect with for either our clients or people in an audience or whatever, it's all healing. It's all healing. So I think mediums are all healers. So my background started when I started becoming a medium, but I also took some courses and read a lot of books on spiritual healing, in particular by Harry Edwards, who was one of the greatest healers of the 20th century. I read all of his books and started practicing healing the way he recommends doing it. Plus, I also took Reiki classes and I took shamanic healing classes as well. And then I took some and read a lot about medical intuitive readings, which I also feel are very healing. So I have a varied background in healing.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, you've got this genealogy background. I love the combination of those two worlds, because for me, you really, I shouldn't say you can't do one without the other, but it makes for a fascinating chocolate in your peanut butter combination. So let's talk about that. In your experience, how does genealogy really, sort of weave in well with ancestral healing?
Well, not all genealogists are mediums and not all mediums are genealogists, but I agree with you. I think the two go well together. I think when someone starts to research their ancestors, the ancestors perk up and take notice. I think they realize, oh, somebody's talking about me, somebody's looking for me. And I think depending on the ancestor, I think most want to be found in the records, but I think some put those roadblocks in our way, and so they're more difficult to find. But I do think just the act of researching your ancestors sends out that vibration, sends out that energy that, hey, somebody's interested in me. Somebody wants to know my life story. When I became a medium, and that was my whole quest in writing Midlife Medium, can it improve my genealogy to become a medium? And I think it did, because I'm more aware now of subtle hints or subtle nudges or whatever that I wasn't aware of before. When I was writing my book, In Search of Maria B. Hayden, and I'm not related to Maria at all, when I was researching her, there were twists and turns in the research I don't think I would have normally taken, but I was open to those nudges. I was open to that inspiration from her and said, look here, where normally I don't think I would have looked in those spots. And so I think in developing mediumship, along with being a genealogist, I'm more aware of what our ancestors, the direction they're pointing us into. That's not to say I'm a super genealogist any more than I'm a super medium. I'm just saying that the two have opened my awareness a lot more to our ancestors.
Yeah, yeah. And well, like in Hank Jones's work, he talks about how when you're really into the whole genealogical groove, these amazing synchronicities will occur. And you touched on that a bit. And you also mentioned, this was interesting, that sometimes they will block your research. Wow. Talk about that a bit, if you would.
Well, this is just my own personal opinion. I have nothing, I have no facts to back it up, but I just think, well, if there are those ancestors who want to be found, there also have to be those ancestors who don't want to be found for whatever reason. They don't want you digging in their past, just like people today. I would have a problem with people digging into my past right now. I mean, once I'm dead, that's different, but But the same thing happens in the spirit world. Some people just don't want their stories told. They just don't want you to know about them for whatever reason. Either they're embarrassed by something, or they want to keep something private. They're just not ready. Yet 10 years later, you could do research on that same person and all of a sudden those brick walls fall down. Why is that?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if maybe when that happens, because I relate to that, that maybe you need to grow up a little bit so that you can hear their story with more compassion and understanding about maybe why they acted the way they acted. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And the other aspect of my genealogical journey is learning how to put ancestors into historical perspective. What is a scandal today may not have been a scandal 100 years ago. Okay, for some people, abortion is a scandal. Back more than 100 years ago, when it wasn't illegal, when it was common because there were no reliable means of birth control, when women either took abortifacients, chemicals, or they sought a surgical abortion, it wasn't looked down upon because there weren't any methods to control family size. So it wasn't a scandal. Yet today, if we consider it a scandal, we look back on it as a scandal. But if we do the social history research, if we find out what life was like, how common was this, then we realize, hey, we're putting our judgments onto their lives, our personal opinions onto their lives. And maybe that's why they don't want us to find them.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Now, I'm also thinking of just the way that society is shifting. As I've told you in the past, I'm working on a story about my ancestors' experience coming over from Scotland, and I just found and on the ship manifest that my great grandmother was dispatched or discharged. I'm not sure what DIS stands for, to her brother, and then her sister-in-law was sent to traveler's aid. Women traveling unaccompanied by their husbands weren't allowed off the ship until they had a man to travel with them. And for me, that's just like, oh my God. But back then, that's just the way it was. So societal norms change as well. Have you seen that type of thing come into play with your work?
Always, always. And DIS means discharged into her husband or some other male relative, because we think of slave trading going on today. It happened back then, and there were white slave traders waiting at the boat to collect these women who were unescorted and didn't have anybody to pick them up. So the United States was taking action against that. We see it a lot too with, especially in the 19th century, in the project I'm working on now, women who are committed to insane asylums who were perfectly sane. The project that I'm hoping to write now, and I'm waiting to see how it unfolds, she was committed to an insane asylum twice for her beliefs in spiritualism. Hopefully we wouldn't have that today. But back in the 19th century, that was a very, and early 20th century, that was a very common thing to do. If you spoke out against your husband, if you spoke out against your minister, you were put in an institution because obviously there was something wrong with you. So, and again, we can't pass our morals and our judgment against our ancestors until we know and understand what it was like for them. And throughout my genealogical career, my main thing that I do besides research is write family histories. And I feel that's where a lot of the healing happens. When you write about your ancestors, as you're doing, Lisa, and you put them in historical context, and you make people see that what they were doing was really no different than what anybody else was doing at the time, our ancestors recognize, she understands, she knows me. And that brings healing to them because it's without judgment.